faithfully conveying value and interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today I'll be interpreting for you this novel by Selma Lagerlöf. The Wonderful Adventures of Nils was published in 1906. This adventure novel features a child protagonist and was written for young readers, but has now become a timeless classic, beloved by both adults and children worldwide. It can be said this novel earned Lagerlöf three pioneering honors. First, in 1909, she became the first female writer to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. For this book, then in 1914, she was elected as the first female member in the history of the Swedish Academy. Later, her portrait was printed on Swedish banknotes, making her the first woman to receive this honor. The creation of this work, actually by chance, in 1902, Sweden's largest publisher, Bonniers, and the Swedish National Teachers Association reached an agreement to publish a textbook about Sweden's land and people, and they invited Lagerlöf to write it. At the time, the 44-year-old Lagerlöf was already a renowned female writer. Her works, often set in Swedish countryside and incorporating folk legends, were very popular. Plus, having been a middle school teacher in her youth, she knew textbook writing methods, making her the ideal candidate. Lagerlöf happily accepted the invitation. But soon, she realized her true strength was storytelling, not formally introducing Sweden's mountains, rivers, and customs, which felt rather dull. So she reimagined the project, believing stories should start from a child's perspective, with animals, specifically birds, as ideal protagonists since they offer unique viewpoints and can freely reach different places through flight. By following the bird's journey, readers could develop fresh yet coherent understanding of Sweden's geography and culture. So Lagerlöf later traveled extensively across Sweden, researching local customs, collecting folk legends, and reading numerous books on geography and cultural history. The novel uses fairy tale fantasy style, featuring Nils and his bird friends during their 8-month journey. Like a dream, through the main plot's progression, the novel depicts Sweden's landscapes and historical sites while weaving in folk legends. It praises Swedish people's diligence and kindness, explores human-environment relationships, offers serious advice on family and children's education, and reveals timeless universal truths of human society. Lagerlöf's approach to writing a textbook was a bold adventure, but she ended up with huge success. The novel was a hit with both teachers and kids. It swept across the country, Europe, and the world, later adapted into cartoons and comics, becoming a classic that influenced all of humanity. All right, let's dive into the novel, The Wonderful Adventures of Nils. Our hero Nils is a 14-year-old boy from a farming family in Skåne, southern Sweden. He's a troublemaker and stubborn, doesn't care for his mom and dad, doesn't like his village buddies, hates church, and can't stand school. He's cruel to the cows, chickens, and cats around the house. None of the animals can stand him. One spring day, he stumbles upon a little guy like a bug at home. That's a tante, a Swedish folk spirit. Nils snags him with a net and toys with him. Well, the tante gets mad and shrinks Nils down to finger size with magic. Nils is terrified now. The house animals see the little troublemaker and tease him, getting back at him. A flick of the cat's tail sends Nils flying. Nils steps outside, spots wild geese flying by, calling to the barnyard goose to head north to Lapland with them. The goose takes the bait, saying, "I'm coming with you." Oddly, Nils can understand animal talk now. He hears the goose is off and grabs its neck to hold him back, but winds up flying high with the goose. Nils sees his village fade into the distance. He's scared at first, but eases into the high flight and thinks touring with the geese is pretty fun. So Nils leaves the people behind, dives into nature, and has all sorts of adventures with the geese on their journey. And early on, the wild geese are suspicious of Nils because he's human and the goose isn't too fond of him. The very first night, a fox slips into the flock, grabs a goose by the neck, and hauls it off. Nils catches it just in time, runs after, snatches the fox's tail, and the goose gets away. A couple days later, the goose gets into trouble too, snatched by some kids. To save the goose, Nils slips into an old castle, wanders around, and spots the maid ready to chop it up in the kitchen. Nils shouted loudly, startling the maid, and the goose seized the chance to escape. In these two incidents, Nils displayed bravery and kindness he never showed in human society before, earning the geese's trust. He regarded the geese and the gander as true friends and actively took on the responsibility to protect the entire flock. Although the flock chooses the safest place to rest every night, danger still lurks. The fox that had attacked the flock before was tracking them through cliffs and riverbanks, and he even ordered eagles, mice, and otters to assault the geese. But Nils drove them away just in time. Nils' actions earned the fox's resentment. Later, in a small town, the fox found the flock and followed the lead goose from afar. Alka responded without hesitation. Nils is one of us, and every member of our flock is willing to sacrifice their life for him. Nils used to have no respect for animals, but now he shares a deep bond with the geese. Moreover, Nils showed kindness to more animals in need of help. For example, once when the geese rested at the southern tip of Åland, the gander secretly brought food to a little gray-eyed goose stranded on a pile of rocks. Nils discovered the little goose was injured and helped set its dislocated bone. After recovering, the little goose joined the flock and later became a happy couple with the gander. Another time, the geese arrived at Lake Tokern, where a group of mallards lived, and one named Yarrow was trapped by humans. Then the humans tied it to a rope and released it to lure more mallards so they could shoot them. Seeing his kind being killed one by one, Jarrow was in great pain. Nils cooperated with the geese to distract an ambush. The geese were tasked with diverting the hunter's attention, cleverly saving Jarrow. Later, Nils also helped a group of helpless sheep on Little Carl's Island, trapping 3 foxes that were bullying them with a snare. Whenever he saw an animal in trouble, a cow, a dog, a crow, or a swan, he would offer comfort and help. He became keen and sensitive, good at noticing others' difficulties and offering kindness in a timely manner. He began to sincerely sympathize with every weak life. But such kindness and compassion exist among animals too. For instance, when the mallard Jarrow realized he'd become bait, he ignored his own safety and shouted warnings to all lake birds not to approach him. Another example, eagles are natural predators of geese, but when lead goose Akka found an orphaned eaglet, she caught fish to feed and raise it. When the eaglet grew up, it repaid the kindness and never attacked geese. Nils also attended an animal friendship gathering on Mount Kula with the geese. This grand event is an idealistic scene in the book. In the mountains, each peak gathered different animals: herons, cranes, foxes, seabirds, mice, ravens, larks, hares, and more. Birds and beasts, herbivores and carnivores all came to the gathering. Some competed in singing, others in tests of strength. There were dance competitions too. Every animal, amid spring scenery, radiated vitality, temporarily setting aside predator-prey instincts. Only that vengeful fox appeared suddenly, killing a goose, but was immediately attacked by other foxes who bit off his ear tip and banished him forever. This detail reflects part of the ancient Greek Olympic spirit. Competition is sacred play. Whoever brings hatred into it faces collective rejection. Indeed, Lagerlöf's scenes mirror the ancient Greek Olympics. In antiquity, the Olympics were peaceful celebrations where even enemies laid down arms to compete, and victors enjoyed parade honors. Written when modern Olympics were new, Lagerlöf envisioned this animal gathering as humanity channeling conflict into sport for lasting peace. During his journey with the geese, Nils displayed bravery, wisdom, justice, and kindness. But humans aren't lacking these fine qualities either. Next, we'll see Nils. Now, tiny and riding the gander, observe the human world with fresh perspective. Looking up at humans, Niels discovers many touching details. For example, when geese landed in a marsh, Niels visited a church village alone. Previously uninterested in churches, he now noticed stained glass and colorful paint on walls, door frames, and windows, filling him with joy. He listened to people talking and felt that hearing is such a wonderful thing. He got on a cedar and thought humans were clever and capable. Seeing clinics and pharmacies, he realized people can fight diseases and death, and found it truly amazing. He saw a young woman come to the balcony, say, "Spring is coming," and suddenly felt a sense of melancholy. He began to worry about being excluded from humanity, sometimes from the air. He gazed down at humans and unknowingly developed a compassionate perspective. He marveled at the castles, train stations, churches, factories, cities, and farms below. He noticed how hardworking the horses and oxen plowing the fields were. And the adults who once seemed arrogant to him now appeared so small and slow-moving from the air. When humans looked up at the geese, he could see the longing for freedom on their faces. When flying over mountainous areas, Nils felt the people there must have hard lives. Over plains, he thought they should be happy because they adorned the land with colorful farmlands. Along the way, he heard many stories, feeling the goodness in people's hearts. For example, a university student in Uppsala lost a friend's painstakingly written manuscript and lived in deep guilt ever since. A farm owner felt deeply uneasy because his father had once seized someone else's home. And when he saw the daughter of that family begging late at night, tears uncontrollably welled up in his eyes. Many stories came from the mouths of people or animals. These stories carry Swedish folk elements and bring profound joy to people. In Lagerlöf's view, castles and such are Sweden's material cultural heritage, while folk tales are the spiritual heritage stored in the nation's collective memory. For example, a raven once told Nils a legend. A man selling barrels in the snow was chased by a pack of hungry wolves while driving a sled. In his escape, he saw a hunched old woman with a limp. At first, he didn't stop, but soon he felt a stabbing pain in his chest. Under the condemnation of his conscience, he turned back to rescue the old woman, and they fled together. Then he fought back the wolves with barrels, and both were saved in the end. The raven said that with careful thought, one can always find a solution that benefits everyone. The most touching story also took place on a certain night in human society. A homeless woman knocked on a family's door. Though poor with 6 children, the couple warmly took her in. The homeless woman had tuberculosis and died after staying there for a while. Because they failed to destroy or disinfect the items she'd touched, 4 girls in the family got sick one by one and died, leaving only the youngest brother and sister. The man didn't understand this was all caused by infectious disease. He believed he'd done some evil that brought such cruel divine punishment. Under the weight, he abandoned the family, leaving the woman to support it alone. But sadly, the woman later fell ill too. On her deathbed, she told the 2 children, "I've never regretted taking in that sick woman. Everyone dies, but people can choose whether to die with a good conscience or a bad one." After their mother's death, the siblings struggled alone. They learned it was tuberculosis, decided to find their father, to say their mother and sisters weren't punished but had a common infectious disease. While searching for their father, they shared tuberculosis prevention knowledge everywhere. So people learned to keep homes clean with brooms, brushes, detergents, and soap to fight the terrible virus. Tuberculosis was called the White Plague. It ravaged 19th century Europe, and Sweden wasn't spared. Lagerlöf's sister and her children were also tuberculosis victims. Not until early 20th century, with antibiotics and public health education, was this dreadful disease gradually controlled. Lagerlöf wrote this not just to lament viral suffering or praise medical achievements. She wanted to tell readers what benefits humanity isn't just technology, but conscience and noble compassion. In 1912, Lagerlöf even wrote a moving novel, The Coachman, to spread TB prevention knowledge when invited by an organization. During his journey with the geese, Nils rediscovered humanity's goodness, but also saw disheartening realities. And often, humans and animals cannot coexist peacefully. Humans don't just hunt animals for food, they also invade animal habitats and wreck their own environment for farming, mining, and other economic gains. Lake Tåkern, where Nils rescued the mallard, is Sweden's largest and finest bird lake, with reed beds, muddy shores, countless ponds serving as natural nesting grounds, teeming with fish fry, aquatic plants, and tadpoles birds love. But people near Lake Tåkern decided to drain it to create fertile farmland. They planned to start immediately after signing the agreement. But the day before signing, a wealthy farm owner's 3-year-old son vanished. After searching all day with no trace, his mother believed he'd drowned. As she wept, she noticed swans, teals, and mallards mourning nearby. Suddenly, she realized her pain of losing a child mirrored the birds' pain of losing their home. She thought, if we drain the water, where will they raise their young? With this realization, she told her husband, "This is divine will." The farm owner declared he'd stop the project tomorrow, saying, "God doesn't want us disturbing nature's order." Actually, the boy was alive. He adored the mallard Jarrow and had sneaked to an islet to play with Jarrow, Nils, the geese, and the gander. Only when darkness fell did adults find and bring him home. Thus, an innocent child, unwittingly with Nils, saved Lake Tåkern and its birds. This story in the book draws from real history. Around 1902, Swedes planned to drain Lake Tåkern for farmland, but Lagerlöf led an environmental campaign, advocating tirelessly until the lake was saved. The book also weaves eco-themed tales like a legend about Falun. Falun had a massive copper mine where many grew rich. They owned grand estates and smelters. One mine owner proposed to a farmer's daughter, but she refused to move there, disgusted by the city's smoke. The mine owner only realized upon returning to the city that he lived there, completely unaware that it had long been surrounded by smog, with no grass growing. So he gave up mining, built a manor far outside the city, and only then married his sweetheart. Similarly, when writing about Kolmården Forest, the book also tells such a history. This forest was dense and eerie with wild beasts roaming. People were terrified and tried to clear it for mining, but mining failed, the forest regrew, and people realized they shouldn't defy nature but live in harmony with it. Lagerlöf believed nature embodies the order created by God. Human activities that disrupt this order aren't always due to greed, but often ignorance. The key is learning lessons promptly. She believed humans are part of nature. They can hunt birds, catch fish, farm land, build irrigation, mine minerals, like predators needing meat, but mustn't exceed limits or it becomes evil and corrupts conscience. Nils also reflects the order of nature. Though he sympathizes with the weak, he never tries to disrupt nature's laws. For example, on A Little Carl's Island, when Nils heard foxes killed many sheep, his first thought was, but foxes gotta eat, they need to survive too. Only when he confirmed foxes were deliberately killing sheep did he set traps to capture the foxes. In fact, while Nils helps geese with wisdom and courage, he only warns and drives away threats, never uses human weapons or kills attackers. In the book, Lagerlöf voices her environmental ideals through lead goose Akka regarding predators. All human actions toward nature, whether using, taking, or protecting, must start from treating animals and nature kindly. Akka says humans shouldn't have Earth all to themselves. You have such vast lands, you could spare a few bare rocks, shallow lakes, wet marshes, desolate mountains, and remote forests for us poor animals to find peace. But instead of doing that, humans hunt and persecute us. Akka hopes Nils can convey this idea to humans. Riding the gander, Nils followed the geese to Sweden. To the northernmost Lapland, then flying south, Nils gradually began missing his hometown. By chance, he learned that if he let his parents kill the gander, he'd return to normal size. This news deeply troubled Nils. He certainly didn't want to kill his friend. But the gander knew nothing of this. In October's autumn, the gander and geese brought Nils back to Skåne. Seeing familiar scenes excited him, but finger-sized, he couldn't meet his parents. He overheard his parents saying he must have stolen the gander and run away, probably turned bad, but agreed not to scold him if he returned. Hearing this pleased Nils, but unexpectedly, the gander entered the house first. Thrilled to see the gander returned with a gray-lag goose, Nils' father was overjoyed. His mother immediately reminded him, St. Martin's Day is coming. Kill and sell these two. St. Martin's Day on November 11th is a traditional European festival. That day, every family eats goose. Hearing knives being sharpened outside, Nils panicked. He'd completely forgotten that only the goose's death would restore him. He'd forgotten all about that condition. He only knew betraying a friend was a terrible sin. Without caring how he looked, he banged on the door, shouting, "Don't kill the goose!" When his parents opened the door, they saw normal-sized Nils and cried out in joyful surprise. It was Nils' kindness and loyalty that ultimately restored him. He hugged his parents tightly. Nils had finally returned to his life. Remembering how he'd mistreated animals, he felt deeply ashamed. But Nils also realized his father only made him tend geese, and his mother scolded him for animal abuse. They never considered the geese's feelings, just like ignoring Nils. The care, loyalty, and compassion Nils learned on his journey were never taught by his parents. Here, Lagerlöf reveals her concerns as an educator. He believes parents should focus on nurturing children's emotions and imagination. Otherwise, even if the nation leaves a rich spiritual heritage, kids can't learn it through daily example. Therefore, Lagerlöf spent her life advocating for schools and society to pay more attention to children's inner worlds. Lagerlöf's close friend, a renowned Swedish educator and feminist, Ellen Key, declared in her writings that the 20th century would become the century of the child and society's focus would shift towards children. This viewpoint was also one of the main motivations that prompted Lagerlöf to write The Wonderful Adventures of Nils as a youth novel in the early 20th century. The novel's main story is roughly told, but the many legends and fables in the book convey ancient and simple moral truths in human society, leaving a lasting impression. Lagerlöf once said, "Those heroic and fairy tales are why I deeply love the country I'm rooted in." I'll now select a few more to share with everyone. For example, in Upland, an old woman compared this land to a person. Back then, because it was poor and desolate, it went begging elsewhere and gathered back a river, a mountain, a forest, a bay, and other things that others didn't want. He developed iron ore from the mountains, placed the forests, hills, and bays in the most suitable positions, threw rocks and mounds into the sea to form islands, and through diligent labor made himself prosperous and beautiful. By the Dala River, a pastor told the story of how the river got its name. Originally, there were two big rivers, each with its own name, competing to show their rushing power. But later, they discovered each other's magnificence and exclaimed it sincerely. Thus, under the mediation of the forest, the two rivers merged into one, flowing to the sea. They took a new name, Dala River. And the most intriguing legend in the book is one that Nils personally experienced. One evening, he discovered a city on a beach. He walked in and found it splendid and golden. He came to the market, and merchants wanted to sell him something. Nils said he had no money, and the merchants cried, "Ha!" Nils remembered seeing a rusty coin on the beach earlier and ran to pick it up, but when he returned, the city had vanished. This city was once prosperous, but due to its residents' arrogance, extravagance, and greed, it was submerged by storms and floods. Every 100 years, the city surfaces from the sea for just one night, remaining for only an hour. During that hour, a merchant must sell something to an outsider for the city to survive. Learning he couldn't save the city, Nils wept. But later, seeing a time-worn city, he remembered the sunken one. Though never seeing daylight, it preserved its glorious beauty, its people immortal, which comforted him. Through this tale, Lagerlöf reveals the ancient truth of fortune-misfortune duality, contemplating existence inside and outside time. Those within time witness seasons, day-night cycles, experience growth and love, but endure decay, loneliness, and death. Those outside time escape decay, but lose meaning and direction. For Nils, shrinking freed him from humanity, granting true freedom but exposed him to endless dangers. Returning to humanity, he no longer feared beasts or disasters, but couldn't wander freely, bearing responsibilities, emotional turmoil, and mortality. This eternal dialectic of fortune, misfortune, is life's truth everyone must face. This novel gathers rich geographical and cultural knowledge. Through characters, it vividly describes Sweden's landscapes, cities, castles, even Stockholm's origin, weaving moral teachings that reflect the author's call for conscience, peace, environmental care, and hope for the next generation. But though targeting youth with virtue, it doesn't avoid life's harsh truths. It directly portrays human suffering and depicts nature's beauty alongside its harsh realities. The Wonderful Adventures of Nils is a noble novel, radiating sincerity in every word. Lagerlöf herself spent her life seeking truth. Beyond writing classics, she opposed fascism in her later years, rescuing German Jewish poet Nelly Sachs, earning global acclaim. As the 1909 Nobel Prize in Literature citation stated, Lagerlöf and her work embody noble idealism, vivid imagination, and spiritual sensitivity. Though Lagerlöf never married or had children, after the novel's publication, thousands of young readers wrote to her and visited her at Marbacka Manor. In 1940, Lagerlöf died of a cerebral hemorrhage, but her dearest child, this novel, continues to nourish human hearts. All right, that concludes our interpretation of Lagerlöf's The Wonderful Adventures of Nils. Reading notes are below the audio. See you tomorrow.